My name is Rabbi Mordechai Lightstone, and together with my wife Chana, we run Tech Tribe. We're a community for Jews in tech and digital media, i.e. all of you here today. And the purpose of this talk, it's the second one of our, or really the third of our Jewish Shmooze events that started after October 7th, is to bring people together, to have a chance to talk, to share, to listen, and to kind of share space as people in a community that may not always come together, because there are many Jews who work in tech here in New York City, but we don't always recognize the fact that we have peers, we have colleagues, we have people who are together here with us, to have our backs and support us during difficult times. In the kind of build up to the evening tonight, so there were two things, and I'll keep the rabbinic speech short, but there were two things that came to mind. First of all, tonight is the holiday of Pesach Sheni. It's the second Passover, which in Jewish tradition represents the fact that we always have a second chance. That even if you missed the first Passover, for some reason you didn't get matzah, or you did, but it wasn't, didn't feel right, things didn't feel like the way they should be, so now's the chance to make it up. We actually have matzah here, you're welcome to take, with a matzah board, artisanal matzah board with matzah and cheese and dips and fun things like that, besides the sushi. The sushi being the Jewish food, the matzah board being, kind of the hipstery thing. And then, on top of that, it's also the days of Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer. That every day between Passover and Shavuot, the holiday coming up on June 12th, so every single day we count towards the giving of the Torah, we count towards the holiday Shavuot. So the question is, why are we counting days? In Jewish tradition we count days. You count something that has a change, right? You count a population. Did it go up? Did it go down? Did it grow? Did it diminish? You count fluctuations in the weather to see how the weather has changed over time. But if you count the day, every day is 24 hours, every hour is 60 minutes, every 60 minutes, 60 seconds. You're counting things that seem to never be able to change. What's the point of counting weeks? No matter what you're counting something that seems immutable and eternal and unchanging. And I feel like, to a certain degree, that we deal with the tension of time since October 7th. On one hand, it feels like it's been 7 months, it feels like it's been 7 years, it feels like it's been 7 days, at least for me personally. It feels like time has both kind of distended and grown longer and shorter simultaneously. And when we count during these days, so we deal with the paradox of time, and that's why it's worth counting time. Because time has infinite potential. You could fill time with content, sitting there scrolling TikTok, scrolling Instagram, and just filling up time with whatever passes by. And you can fill time with content, with meaning and purpose, and a sense of vision. And when we do the later, we invest in it infinite value and purpose and goodness, and it becomes something that's worth counting and worth staying on top of. And therefore, that's why this evening we brought together three amazing speakers, and really we brought together all of you here as speakers, as people, as members of the community, to share, to speak, to share their experiences about what it's been like to work in tech these past 7 months, and how they filled it with meaning and purpose, I hope, and found a way to move things forward.
Okay, I'm just kidding. Hi everyone, I'm Margarita Lyadova. I'm the director of product at Innovid, which is an Israeli tech company. We're an ad server, and I also host a new Jewish podcast called People Jew Wanna Know. I interview remarkable Jewish people every week. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts and on Instagram at People Jew Wanna Know. I'm joined tonight by Courtney Tilshin and Avi Ben-Dori, who are also fellow Jews in tech. And it's no secret that after October 7th and the ongoing war in Israel and Gaza, the workplace has become an unpleasant and challenging environment for Jewish people and people who support Israel. You with me? Yeah. Okay. So we wanted to use this panel as an opportunity to not only gather as a community where people kind of get it, but also reflect, how people like Courtney and Avi, who've been working in tech, have been able to stay positive, and if there's anything that they've done that has helped them affect positive change onto others in the workplace. So that's how we're hoping to use our time today. Before we get started, I want to share on a personal note that I used to work at Amazon myself. I know Courtney still works there. I resigned a little bit over a month ago, and I went to Innovid, an Israeli company, because I felt it was no longer acceptable for me to work at Amazon in light of how they handled everything post-October 7th. I want to acknowledge and remind all of you that today there is still an Amazon employee, Sasha Trupanov, who is held hostage by Hamas. I pray for his safe return every day, and I wish for nothing more than for the immediate release of the hostages. It is unacceptable how that has been handled, and I voted with my choices as an employee in tech to leave. Now, the whole experience, everything that's happened post-October 7th, it's a very traumatic and difficult experience for our community. It's turned the Jewish community upside down. We never imagined we'd have an event like this, right? But I think it is absolutely beautiful that we came together, and I appreciate your time and your willingness to come out tonight to see us speak, so thank you for that. And before we get started, I figured we'd do a little bit like of an interactive activity together to make it less awkward. It's an intimate, space. So I'm gonna read a couple of statements and you clap your hands if it resonates with you, okay? So the first one is, clap your hands if your company has a designated Jewish employee resource group or a Jewish club. Clap your hands if your company has acknowledged the events that happened in Israel on October 7th. Clap your hands if your company has called for the release of the hostages. Now clap your hands if you feel like your company can be doing more to support you as a Jewish employee. Okay, thanks so much for participating in that. That was very interesting. And I guess let's kick off our panel here. Courtney, Avi, thank you so much for being here with me. Courtney, we'll start with you and then we'll go to you, Avi. Courtney, tell us about yourself. What do you do for work, professionally, in your experience?
My name is Courtney Tilchin. I grew up here in New York on Long Island. I went to college at Indiana University, and then shortly after graduating, I moved out west to Seattle and took a job at Amazon through their undergraduate program. And I work in tech, but I work in retail in tech, so it's a little bit of an asterisk. My current role at Amazon, I've been there for 9 years, so I've been there since then. My current role, I'm the category leader overseeing our jewelry and watch business, and I lead supply chain for the fashion and fitness categories. So if anyone buys apparel, sneakers, luggage, any of those products on Amazon, pickleball, paddles, my team is responsible for making sure that we have the product that you're looking for and we can get it to you in the 1 to 2 day promise that you're expecting from Amazon. So it's a little about me.
So my name's Avi. I currently work at Bloomberg. Been working at Bloomberg for about 3 years. I guess going in reverse order before that. I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey, went to college at Princeton, and then went straight to Bloomberg. Again, been there about 3 years. I'm a software engineer. I work in market data observability. So my team builds systems that monitor the performance of the Bloomberg market data pipeline that's actually feeding all this real-time data to our clients and trying to proactively detect problems with it sort of before the clients notice.
Thanks. Okay, so the first question I wanted to bring up was, can you talk about how your company has handled communicating what's going on in Israel right now? Talk about your experience, and do you think they should be doing more?
Sure.
Avi, you want to start?
Sure. This is definitely a hot button question that every company has sort of decided to handle differently. In Bloomberg's case, I would say I've been happy at times and unhappy at others. From the outset, Bloomberg pretty quickly, it took them about 2 days to release a statement about October 7th. The statement was very clear, very direct. Probably could have said more, but they at least took a morally clear stance. And that was something very heartening to see as a Jewish employee at Bloomberg. They also opened up a special portal where we could have donations, charitable donations matched to certain organizations that were doing work on the ground to help Israeli civilians who had been impacted by the events of October 7th and the aftermath. And that was also really heartening to see as an employee and to feel like there were concrete things that we could do as employees to help Israel, and that Bloomberg would also facilitate and help us in those endeavors. At the same time, there are definitely places Bloomberg has fallen short. Bloomberg News still is not willing to call Hamas a terrorist organization outright in news articles. They will instead put the byline that says, Hamas is designated a terror organization by the US and the EU, but they won't flat out say it. They call it a militant group, and that's definitely difficult to see. In the same fundraising portal where we can have donations matched and send extra money to Magen David Adom or something, there are also options to send money to Doctors Without Borders, and until very recently you could send money to UNRWA, which was I would say is definitely a shortcoming and something that we weren't happy to see. We've also been pushing to form an official Jewish employee resource group, sort of to have the funding to run events, to bring Jews at Bloomberg together, to more officially form some of the sort of unofficial community that we've had so far, and really be a place where Jews at the company can connect and share their experiences and learn how to deal with sometimes everyday happenstances of anti-Semitism that can come up in the workplace. And we've unfortunately been met with some pushback. It's hard to communicate what is the need for an official Jewish employee resource group. I think a lot of the employee resource group space at U.S. companies in general tends to see things sort of through a race or gender-oriented lens, and there's good reason for that historically, but sort of those existing lenses don't really account for the experiences and needs of a Jewish community. So it's been hard to work with sort of the existing mechanisms in place for supporting particular employee needs at Bloomberg when they aren't really oriented around kind of what a Jewish community would need. So on the whole, I would say there have definitely been some successes, and there have been failures, and we've pushed back against those too. And overall, the Jewish community has come together in unofficial ways too, and we've really tried to form connections with each other and keep our heads up.
Thanks. Very diplomatic answer. Good and bad.
Try not to get fired.
Yeah.
So for a little bit of context, I was actually in Israel on October 7th. I arrived on October 6th for vacation. The vacation obviously did not go as planned. And so I ended up booking multiple flights and stopping in 5 different countries to try to get home. And so my vacation ended up being cut short, but I still decided not to go back to work until I was originally scheduled to, because obviously had a lot to process during that time. And I remember getting home and thinking, I don't want to check my email, I don't want to work, I want to be able to decompress and process everything that I just experienced.
I just want to add my 2 cents on this as a former Amazon disgruntled employee over this issue. So there are a couple of things that Courtney can't say, but I can because I don't work there anymore, so I'm about to spill the tea. When this whole thing went down, Amazon built out, it has a wiki system where you can make web pages for internal resources. And the Arabs at Amazon Affinity Group made a public page that was titled, "The Situation in Palestine." That was the title of the company-wide wiki page available to every corporate employee. That is 100,000 corporate employees worldwide. Here's what that wiki page said. It cited Amnesty International, UNRWA, and every other impartial source we know and love, saying that Israel is committing apartheid, genocide, and every other claim that's completely untrue about Israel. It said that we have to divest from Israel as a company, as Amazon. We have to call on our leadership to do something immediately. And by the way, we're bummed that there are hostages, including one of our own employees. And there were hundreds of comments on that wiki page from Amazon employees that were like, "Thank God someone put it into words. I was so distraught. I can't believe the apartheid and genocide. So glad this wiki page exists." So immediately when it went up, Jewish people in the Jewish Affinity channel started saying, like, "Guys, what do we do about this? This doesn't seem right. Like, we can't believe this exists. This is very dangerous. More importantly, it doesn't have merit in the workplace." If we set aside the fact that these claims are not true, if we ignore that for a second, this isn't something that should be addressed in the workplace to this extent. So a bunch of people reported it to HR, including myself. None of us got responses, except later we all got the same response that was like, "We're investigating it," and that was all. A few months later, before I resigned, I went to go see the status of the wiki page, because I'm nosy, right? So I go in there and there's an update, like a bubble on that page that says, "This page went through an investigation process. The results of this investigation process can be found at this link," and there's a hyperlink to another page. When you click the hyperlink, it redirects you to like a ticketing system at the company. But unfortunately, it says you do not have permissions to view the contents of the ticket. So I have permissions to see that Israel commits apartheid and genocide, but I don't have permission to see that investigation that was conducted at Amazon. So that's the current state of that wiki page. Any Amazon employee has access to it and can confirm that that is in fact true. So that was really annoying. But there was another component about this that really drove me up the wall. Amazon reinstated a mandatory 3-day return to office policy for corporate employees. Aside from the fact that that's kind of weird that they track our badges, because I had to go in, I got to spend a lot of time in the office. So I got to see the things that were going on in the office. And in the elevators of the office, all the walls are whiteboards, and there are markers in the elevators where you could write things. A side tangent, one time I saw someone write "help me," which was kind of funny. But once a week, I would take an elevator at the office. I would see things written in Arabic. I would see "from the river to the sea." I would see "Free Palestine" written in the elevator. And as a Jewish employee, I would have to go and experience that and then go to work and go to my meeting as if nothing was wrong, right? And move on with my day. To this day, there is no public statement about the hostage that is an Amazon employee. No one in Amazon leadership has ever publicly called out the fact that one of our employees is hostage. Courtney alluded to this, and I'll say it in simpler words. A theory that many Amazonians have is that it's in order not to tip negotiations, right? If we create a lot of noise around this one particular hostage, Hamas will want a lot in return in order to release him. So that's the idea. Whether that's right or not is up to each one of us to decide, but I'm just giving you the facts of the situation, what led to my decision to leave. And of course, I wrote all of this to HR upon my resignation. And I'll mention that I owed some money to Amazon back for my relocation, and they're very strict about taking that money back. But I sent that email about all the hostile incidents, the wiki page, everything. Do you think they asked for my money back? No, they did not. So, on that cheery note, we'll move on to our second question. You talked about kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on at your workplace right now. What do you wish Jewish corporate employees had in this challenging time from their companies?
To start with, the recognition that it seems like every other special interest group has received at every one of these companies ever since they've existed. To quote a byline, like, all Jews have ever wanted is to be treated like everyone else. And so many of the complaints that we've listed are just instances of Jews not being treated like everyone else. I have to look at Free Palestine in people's bios, knowing that they probably mean from the river to the sea, and they probably are calling for the genocide of Israel. And when I complain about it to HR, I'm told that we don't know if they actually mean from the river to the sea. All they said is Free Palestine, so it's probably fine. Notwithstanding the fact that I'm sure that if it were a similar, on the edge statement targeting any other minority group, that statement would no longer be up. And I mentioned sort of the need for a Jewish affinity group and the use case it can provide, including in promulgating to Bloomberg leadership a definition of what anti-Semitism looks like in a contemporary sense, and including anti-Zionism in that. Actually recognizing how contemporary Jews think about anti-Semitism, and taking that into account and establishing clear guidelines of the company based on that input, because that is the standard that's set for for every other minority group, and that's all Jews really want, is the same benefits that everyone else gets. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Having a safe place to share your experience and have other people who understand what it's like in the position that you're in, and understanding in the middle of October, how are we going to just go about our day and act as business as usual. The only other people that understand that are other Jewish employees in tech. I think having just that space and that community and being able to connect and share your experience, I think is really valuable. And so for me, that's something that I was a part of before October 7th, but I more so used it like when I was living in Seattle to know what events were going on. Whereas now I would say, like, anytime there's an opportunity to just get in a room with other Jewish employees and get to know them and connect and hear their experience, I find that really valuable. And so I think just having the option available for when you do want to connect.
Thanks. And in the last 7 months, both of you went on a mission trip to Israel through Tech Tribe. Mordechai organized it. Let's start with you, Courtney. Can you talk about your experience and what it meant for you to go? Because I'm assuming everyone else was in tech working there.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say overall it was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. I went for a couple reasons. So as I mentioned, I was in Israel on October 7th and I kind of ran out of there. And so I felt pulled to go back and have some type of closure to the experience. And so that was part of my motivation. I also have family there that I wanted to visit again. And then the other main motivation was I was struggling with coming back from being there and trying to go back to normal work and go about my day. And I had connected with other employees at other events and things in the meantime, but I was really looking for that connection with other people who had experienced the same thing as me. And so when it came across, it actually did come through our Jewish Affinity email channel. Someone shared this trip and I was like, great, I've been looking for an opportunity to go and help and support the people of Israel. And I can also go with other tech employees and be able to connect with other people who have had a similar experience. So that was what motivated me to go on the trip. I think what was really meaningful about the trip is obviously we did some of the things that you would normally expect on a mission trip like that. So we met with hostage families. We actually met with Sasha's girlfriend and his mother, who were both hostages that were released after about 50 days. We went to visit wounded soldiers. We did the kibbutz visit. So we did all of those things, which was really meaningful, but there was also a tech spin to it. And so we got to visit a tech company and hear about how they pulled their resources and all of their technology together in the wake of October 7th to be able to help support the needs of Israel. So whether that was with facial recognition technology to help more efficiently recognize bodies because of the just chaos that was going on and the scale at which they needed to do that. And so I thought it was really interesting that we were able to tie kind of just the mission and supporting Israel and with learning more about how the tech community in Israel supported everything that happened, and then also being able to really build relationships and get to know other employees in tech. And so that's where I met Avi. We met a bunch of other people on the trip. There was about 10 of us. And so it was really meaningful in all of those ways. But I think the biggest takeaway for me, there's probably two. One was I went kind of expecting to like, oh, I want to support people and like show support and give them strength. It definitely turned out to be the opposite. I felt like they were comforting me in a lot of these conversations. I was standing there crying while they were trying to like comfort me. It's going to be okay. And I think it reminded me of just the strength and resilience of the people of Israel. And so I took a lot from that. The other big takeaway for me was just the perspective that it gave me. And so you're watching people who are like at risk every single day of like physical attack. They're dealing with real life situations where they're displaced from their homes. They've lost their closest relatives. They have, family that are being held hostage. And so that perspective and the fact that they're able to still find joy despite all of that gave me really valuable perspective of like, okay, well, I'm just dealing with someone at work who's indifferent or, a company that's not helping to support me. And not that those things aren't important. We're fighting our own fight here. But I think that perspective really helped me to be able to push through and not let some of that affect me in the same way and try to find ways to overcome that and kind of in spite of it.
So I was not in Israel on October 7th, thankfully, but when I heard the news on October 7th, I felt this burning desire to be in Israel and to be able to do something. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate, but that lingering feeling of guilt of sort of not knowing what to do or how to help was something that was really eating away at me for a long time. And on October 8th, I actually decided to make Aliyah, which I'll be doing in about a month. But that hasn't happened yet. So until then, I was out there looking for an opportunity of how I could help and what I could do. And an opportunity to go on this trip came along, and I wasn't sure exactly how I would be able to contribute to Israel on the trip, but I thought it was important to go, so I signed up and went. Again, like Courtney mentioned, knowing that it would be a good opportunity to go with other people in tech who had been some sort of experiencing a lot of what I'd been experiencing in tech companies. And one of the remarkable things I found was that everyone we met was genuinely happy and thankful that we were there. They appreciated that we had just gone to see them and to hear their stories, even though there was nothing material we could provide them. In one instance, we met with an evacuee from the South, and she mentioned that she was not going to have anywhere to live in a short time. And someone from our group asked how we could contribute money, and she adamantly refused to accept money from us, which displaying an incredible level of faith that I can't even imagine. She literally said, like, God will provide for me. Can't imagine being in that position or doing that. But hearing from everyone we met how thankful they were that we were there was really moving and incredible and inspiring to see that these people who had experienced so much were so appreciative of us for doing what felt like so little, of just going and bearing witness and listening to their stories. And it was incredibly fulfilling to be able to do something for them, even if the thing we actually were able to provide for them was not what I had been expecting going into this trip in the first place. And I think that was one of the things I found really inspiring about the trip. Other things that moved me were the connections that we were able to form, even in a very short time, both amongst the group and with the people we met. A trip like that is obviously very intense. We're with people that we've just met, and we're going to Kfar Aza and the site of Nova and like meeting with wounded soldiers. Definitely very intense experiences. But I found that we were able to connect on a genuine level with basically everyone we met, because we were there in Israel for reasons that they understood, and that they deeply felt and that were important to them. And it became so clear to me how, even though I was incredibly different in so many ways, and how I grew up and what I did from every person we were meeting, the root of shared and basis of shared values that we had was so incredibly strong, and the intensity of the experiences we were having allowed us to really connect through those shared values, and knowing that we could form that bond with random Israelis that we'd just met, I found really moving, and reminded me of the unity that the Jewish people really do have. And I felt similarly I felt similarly about the connections that the group was able to form on the trip. We were, a group with Jewish practices as different as can be across the range of the group, and we found that we just had so much in common when it came to our Judaism, even though the day-to-day practice looked radically different amongst the different people in the group. We were connecting again on that basis of shared values, and experiencing this trip together. I can definitely say, I have a lot of family in Israel. I've been there, I don't know, a dozen plus times. This was definitely the most meaningful Israel trip of my life. This 3-day trip with people I barely knew was the most meaningful trip of my life. And overall, being able to experience the resilience and perseverance and of the people of Israel, and bond with them, was something that I found really moving.
Thanks for sharing that, guys. Okay, we're nearing the end here. I have my last question for our wonderful speakers before we move on to a little bit of another interactive portion. So I want to end with something positive, and the question that comes to mind is there any way that you've been able to process this to help you get through it, or is there anything you've done that helped create positivity at work that you can share with people here? Like maybe you have some advice that they can use to then apply in their workplace. How do you want to start?
Sure. So creating positivity at work. Now that you've listened to me harp on all the problems I've had with how my workplace has handled this, where's the hidden gem there? So despite all the corporate crap you hear from the top, and the fact that they won't give us all the things we want that everyone else is getting, there are ways to find small wins, certainly. The individual employees, especially the people you've worked with and have formed connections with independently of your Judaism or your experiences with Israel or anything like that, those are connections you can leverage to make a real change. We sort of see the worst of what people think, and we see the loudest people and the ones who want to write Free Palestine in the whiteboard. But the people whose minds aren't made up, in many ways are, well, one vote is one vote, and they're equally important. And those are the people that we can inform just by mentioning a recent experience that we had with anti-Semitism, mentioning a recent trip you took to Israel, mentioning friends and family you have in Israel, sharing an experience you had of reading a piece of news that you thought showed anti-Semitism, talking about your experiences, leveraging the connections you've already built with people to tap into that empathy and extend that empathy to experiences you've had with anti-Semitism, even when those experiences are in the workplace. And like Courtney was mentioning, take the opportunity to form connections with other Jews in your workplace. People are definitely looking for that connection with other Jews, because when you look for the other Jews, you know that they will have a shared experience and somewhat of a shared mindset that you can connect with. One of the few silver linings of October 7th was that Jews are able to connect much more easily after that. I found on October 9th, I got to work, and the Jewish group chat was exploding with people who hadn't ever written anything in there before because they were there looking to connect with other people who had a shared experience and even didn't necessarily have that community to turn to at home. So they turned to other Jews at work because those are the only other Jews they knew. And that's an opportunity to really spread out and meet different kinds of Jews and form communities and bond. I've tried to, whenever someone writes in the chat like, I experienced this incident, or I'm going through these things, but I feel like I don't have anyone to talk to. Like, I try to reach out and grab a cup of coffee with them. It's a small thing, but it's something I can do and something that I feel like has a real impact, and is an opportunity to form real genuine connections. And as for myself, like how I've taken this whole thing and what I'm doing, well, I decided to move to Israel is my big change. So I'm not going to sit here and tell people to do that. I think it's going to be hard. I don't know how hard it's going to be. I haven't done it yet. But if you are feeling inspired, don't lose that feeling, and make it a positive improvement to your life before that feeling goes away. Thanks.
So in terms of how I've processed it, I'm Jewish, so mostly like laughing and complaining. So I think connecting with community has been really big. So I mentioned some of the stuff around within like our Jewish employee affinity group, also just getting more connected to Jewish friends of mine in a more intentional way. Going to different events. We've had a couple different like coffees and things with the folks that are in New York from our trip, just finding ways to like have that connection and be able to have that side of things so that I feel like I'm kind of getting it somewhere and I don't need to have that at work as much. And then also like I think in a time like this, social media can actually be a really tough place to be. But for me, a lot of my friends are Jewish. I intentionally follow a lot of Jewish activists and content creators. And so my feed is actually a pretty safe place for someone who's Jewish. And so there's some days where like the news and what's going on is just a little too heavy that I try to avoid it. But I would say there's also a lot of times where like I follow a lot of people who just are posting hilarious content that just will make me laugh about things that we probably shouldn't be laughing about, but we have no other way to cope or process it other than just finding the humor in it. And so that's been really healing for me. On a personal level, I would say in terms of what I've tried to do with it, I think I'm probably not alone in saying that everything that happened has actually brought me more connected to my Jewishness and to Israel. And so obviously traveling to Israel, finding ways to connect with that community. And then I think for me, like I try to just pay forward the things that help me. And so something that like every day that brings me a lot of pride and joy is like when I'm walking on the street or walking in the office and I see someone rocking their Star of David or wearing a kippah in the office. And so I try to do that. And so I proudly will wear my hostage necklace every day at the office. I have a hostage ribbon on my badge. I try to do those things so that I can make someone else smile when they see it and kind of just be proud in the workplace so that other people can see that and be inspired and do that too.
I wanted to ask a couple of things. I guess one, if you have any questions for the panelists, now is your time to ask. But two, if you have a personal experience of how you've been able to influence your employer positively, we'd love for you to share because it like helps all of us, create the workplace where we want to stay and thrive. So now is the time to do that. And again, do not be shy. Yes, Eric.
One of the things that bothers me a lot, I guess, is knowing Andy Jassy, Mike Bloomberg are both Jewish. Right, and I don't think, having worked at Amazon too with Margarita, and my manager was Jewish, and I tried opening up and having that conversation with him, and it never went anywhere. I don't know, I just find it really shameful, I guess, that those guys who are in this power, leadership position, are more worried about how their business is going to be impacted and aren't publicly advocating the way I believe that they should. I don't know if you guys have had similar thoughts, but it just sort of really, really eats at me. Just knowing that. I don't know if anybody else has any comments, but yeah.
There was someone behind you. You had a comment, right?
A question, yeah.
Or a question.
Yeah, so... Oh, okay, this thing doesn't really work, does it? All right, Oh, I see, okay. All right, great. Well, no, I think you guys talked about the, need or the benefit of Jewish employee resource groups, but I'm curious what all three of you think about sort of companies that go in the opposite direction, where there are no employee resource groups, where it's very much leaving politics out of the workplace. Because from my own personal experience, it's coming from an organization that did have one of these groups, it felt like it didn't make a meaningful difference in what was not a great situation. So it seems almost attractive, at least from the outside, to want to be at an organization that just sort of leaves that aside. And I'm curious to get your takes on that.
If workplaces were apolitical, I think we wouldn't be having a lot of the problems that a lot of us have been facing in the workplace. But the reality is, basically none of them are apolitical. They make political statements when it's convenient for them and when it toes the corporate line. And given that that's the reality, well, Jews should be treated the same way everyone else are. In my particular instance, I will say I have pushed for a Jewish affinity group, not just because other groups have them, but also because I think a Jewish affinity group could serve as a source for corporate leadership of sharing with them what Jewish experiences with anti-Semitism in the workplace have been. But in our ideal world, where the workplace is more politics-free, that doesn't have to be through a Jewish affinity group. Just in some instances, when the infrastructure is already there for affinity groups, I think it can be a very pragmatic way of pushing Jews' concerns forward. And sort of there's that balance that needs to be weighed of pragmatism versus idealism, and how that balance is evaluated is really going to depend on the workplace.
Thanks. Yes, speaking. I work at a Series B tech company headquartered here and globally. And we have people working in Israel. We also have people working in Palestine, and really just sort of everywhere. Something on the effect of the ERG. We do have a Jewish ERG group at my company. It's the only group, and it is sort of notorious for what it's worth. I don't really have another word to describe it.
Of being the only group that's religious based. All the other groups are by race, gender, sexuality. We are called JAM, Jewish at Maven. But we are heavily, we got a budget, and we are definitely invested in from the company. I'm very grateful for that. We have at my company, the ERG groups have to be supported by someone in the C-suite, or we cannot exist. So we need to have a C-suite executive. We only have one C-suite executive who's Jewish at Maven, and she just decided to leave. So it's very difficult now because we don't know if we're going to be supported. And that's a big challenge. I did talk to our DE&I leader. I'm on the committee of the, executive committee of this chapter. It's not maybe that we won't be supported, but we won't be supported the same way. Will we be recognized in the way that we were? Will we have the budget and the investment that we had? And the DE&I leader suggested, maybe we'll just put someone else in there so that you still feel, but it's very different. Someone with a different background. One of the reasons why this was so great is because we had a Jewish C-suite woman as our leader, because she took totally had our backs this entire year, and as well as other times. And to put someone else in that position, I think is not going to do it justice. So now we're in this place where we really don't know what the group will look like. And it's been one of the best things about my company this year was having this group. And it doesn't look like they're hiring someone Jewish right now either. Not that it's just not what's happening. So
That's very interesting. I wonder if they'll have to lift the requirement where you won't need a sponsor because it just doesn't work in your case. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's very interesting. Any other thoughts or emotions people want to share before we close this up? No? Going once? Yes, we got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all in the back. Those will be our last 3.
Hi, so I'm one of the co-founders of my company, and I don't really have a good answer for this. We have around 20 employees, but it's definitely a bit. On October 9th, I brought it up at our stand-up just with the engineering team. I didn't want to bring it to the larger company because only maybe 3 employees were Jewish. And we decided early on, my co-founders and I, that we were going to leave all politics at the door because we're all over the place politically, and we just decided not to. But it is I think it's really tough. In my position, I want to talk about it at times. I'll mention at lunch I'm learning Hebrew, but we rarely bring it up. And I guess I just want to say, like, as when you're in a company leadership position, it is really scary to like try to be an ally in a big way, because there are a lot of people who don't like Jewish people. You know, I've heard comments from other employees that I just sort of ignore and tune out, but we're a small enough company where it doesn't matter that much, and I am one of the guys in charge, so I don't worry about it. But yeah, it's been hard for me because I spend all my time at work as well, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Yeah.
I think one of the things that people don't address is a lot of times I feel Jewish groups wait till something terrible happens like this to kind of start advocating. And I think that as Jewish people and people who feel connected to Israel, we should be doing this in the quiet times. I freelance for an executive, and I've been spending 10 years preaching the love of Israel. Now I'm seeing the dividends. So I'm saying, like, maybe the problem is that we want to just be workers, we want to just have a normal life, but a lot of groups that are very hostile to Israel are constantly working on this. So I think we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to bring Israel to our workplace? Can we invite Israeli speakers? Can we bring Sabra Hummus? Like, what can we do to make Israel kind of not just a crisis point, but a positive point?
Oh, I don't want to be the last comment because I don't want to be the last comment because I'm having trouble finding a positive in this. But I just wanted to say, I've been working close to coming up on 20 years now, and like things haven't really changed. Like, I remember my manager in 2008 had ranted on Facebook about these Israeli thugs, this and that, and then fortunately it wasn't Israel, but like for all these years I'm sitting at the lunch table listening to coworkers talk, and many of them are really smart. Maybe they're smart when it comes to scaling to billions of users or finding product market fit, but like I realized when I'm sitting at the lunch table listening to these guys, they're just a bunch of morons. I don't know what to do, so I just kind of disengage when it comes to politics, and of course disengage when it comes to Israel. I don't see any other way. I mean, it would be nice if, I think part of the thing that gets to me is there's so many emails going out like, oh, you can't make people feel bad for this and that reason. But I kind of feel like I'm used to it. You can't end with me. You need someone who has a little bit more of a positive.
Well, I guess a couple of thoughts. One is, it is heartening to see so many people here and, speaking about this issue. So I think that alone is a good example of how strong the community is and how important it is to come together in times that, where we really are facing challenges. And one other thing I just wanted to add, so I'm also involved with some of the organizations, and UJA, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, they actually have an effort right now around trying to support people creating employee resource groups. They have a lot of resources and a formal effort there. So if anyone's interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you with the right people. I don't know how much they can help, but they have some good guides and experience and a good network there. So just wanted to add that little plug. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so after this is just schmoozing time. Get to know each other, hang out. There's still food left, so please enjoy. Thank you, Rabbi Lightstone, for putting together this beautiful event.